Okay, good afternoon, class. It's a prank when I said that we are already done discussing the entire chapter 1 of this subject, purposive communication, because as I double checked it, I found out that there are still two remaining topics under this chapter. So these two remaining topics are communication ethics and then principles of communication. Okay, so let's begin with communication ethics by defining it. And as we did last time, when we defined purposive communication, we first had the meaning of each of the words, and then we tried to combine them to arrive at uh, its definition. Okay, so in this case, communication ethics, the first word is communication. What is communication? Once again, it is the act or process of communicating, a fact of being communicated, the imparting or interchange of thoughts, opinions, or information by speech, writing, or signs. So I guess there's no need to elaborate on this because we have already discussed and provided lots of meanings of communication, both face to face and during video lectures such as this. So let's proceed with the meaning of ethics. What is ethics? It is a system of moral principles and it deals with values relating to human conduct with respect to the rightness and wrongness of certain actions and to the goodness and badness of the motives and ends of such actions. Okay, so as far as communication is concerned, there are things that we are allowed to do and there are also things that we are not allowed to do. And one best quick example for the things that we are not allowed to do when we are communicating is of course the use of bad words, especially when it comes to formal written communication. And what is one best example of the things that we are allowed to do when we are communicating, as showing rapport or connection with someone we are communicating. Okay, so what are some communication ethics that we have to take note in order for us to achieve the very purpose of communication and in order for us not to be misinterpreted when we are communicating. So communication ethics or ethics in interpersonal communication are the principles governing communication, the right and wrong aspects of it, the moral and immoral dimensions relevant to interpersonal communication. And here are the things or the communication ethics that we have to remember. Number one, maintaining the correct balance between the speaking and listening. So when you're into communication class, especially if it's oral, you have to make sure if you are speaking too much and if you are being tacit all throughout the time. So if you're speaking too much, you also have to make sure that the one you're communicating is given a chance to speak what is inside his or her mind. So dapat hindi lang ikaw yung nagkasalita, it's not only you expressing what you feel or what you think about or what you believe in, but you also have to give chance to the person you are talking to express himself in order for an effective communication to take place. And it's also applicable vice versa. So if you think that you are being tacit, yung absorber ka lang, nakikinig ka lang, hindi ka nag-share ng thoughts mo, that is also not healthy. It's almost tantamount to one-to-one communication. O de sana, hindi na lang nag-share sa'yo yung tao na kumakausap sa'yo. Sana sarili na lang niya ang kinakausap niya. Because we have one type of communication, we have already learned that from our previous video lectures. So, based on the pattern, one type of communication is the one-to-one communication kung saan someone can talk to himself when it comes to decision making, contemplating on something, or just reflecting, wondering, ganyan. So, sana nag-wonder na lang siya, nag-reflect na lang siya, nag-contemplate na lang siya within herself kaysa nakipag-usap siya sa iyo ng hindi ka naman nagsasalita. Okay, and the second one, the legitimacy of fear and emotional appeal. One of the many purposes in communication class is the purpose of either of the speakers to influence or to convince the person that he or she is talking to. So yun, yung gusto niyang i-convince into believing something or gusto niyang i-convince into doing something. At ang danger lang nito class ay yung tinatawag na fear and emotional appeal. For example, a person is convincing you to lend him money at nag-emotional appeal siya sa'yo kasi nawalan siya ng trabaho, etc. etc. Um, at napaniwala ka naman niya dahil doon sa emotional appeal na tactic niya. So anyone can be deceived through communication, and that is what we are trying to avoid. That is why we are explaining communication ethics as much as possible. Appeal to pity o etong emotional appeal natin ay iniiwasan para magkaroon ng fair judgment at magandang result ang isang communication. Okay. Then pangatlo, what we should consider too is the degree of criticism and praise. There is a certain level in which one could give his criticism and advisably dapat ay constructive ito. Not something that is destructive or that can ruin one's life, that can raise the anxiety of someone or can provoke one's depression, mga ganyan. So, dapat meron lang tayong certain level kung paano natin ibigay yung criticism and also applicable with praise. Too much praise is also not good, and then um, no praise at all is not good kasi praise is one of the best forms of feedback in communication. So when you actually praise a person for something, magandang feedback yun sa communication. Okay. Next one, a death or an overdose of either of the factors could result in unfavorable consequences. So too much is bad and less to zero is also bad. One example, sa ating ventilation. So, too much ventilation kapag lamig na lamig ka naman, kapag diretso na yung air condition at naka-max siya. Ito na yung example ko sa inyo dati na nakakasakit sa legs, hindi ka na makapag-concentrate. For example, you are assigned or tasked to do the minutes of the meeting at lamig na lamig ka na. It's also distracting na. So, it's the same as kapag wala namang air condition, ang init ng kapaligiran, hindi ka rin naman makakapag-focus. So, a death or an overdose can result in unfavorable consequences. And lastly, we have here the principle of honesty on both sides should be completely applied because any amount of insincerity from either the listener or the speaker would not be prudent. What does it mean when we say prudence? Ano ba ang prudence? Ito yung skill or capacity of a person to discern or to judge using the available resources. So, paano niya madidiscern ng tama or madijudge ng tama ang mga pinagsasabi mo kung walang honesty? So dapat there should be honesty from both sides, not only from the speaker but also from the listener, not only from the receiver of the message but also from the sender of the message. Okay, here are some fundamentals of ethical communication. We have responsible thinking, decision making, development of relationships and communities, and ito, contexts, cultures, channels, and media. Itong dulo dito na discuss na natin yan, development of relationships and communities in communication pertain sometimes to rapport, and or you are able to develop organizations or institutions, etc. Through communication. Okay. Decision making and responsible thinking are also fundamentals of ethical communication. Okay, dapat meron kang logic or reasoning when you are into communication. Okay, so we are done discussing ethical communication. Ano naman kaya? How does an ethical communication look like? So, what would be its result? Okay, to what is it going to turn? Yan, ano ang kalalabasan ng isang unethical communication? It threatens the quality of all communication and consequently the well-being of individuals and the society. So, kapag nag-commit ka ng unethical in communication, ito yung magiging result. It threatens the quality of all communication kasi hindi na nga ma-achieve yung desirable result in communication and consequently the well-being of individuals and the society. For yung an example ko sa inyo kanina, use of bad words, how do you think would the receiver of your message feel or take it upon hearing this hurtful words while you are conversing with him or her? Ayan, so his or her well-being um, will be put into ano, ayan. So next, principles of ethical communication. So ito pa yung mga kailangan nating dapat tandaan. Advocate truthfulness, accuracy, honesty, and reason as essential to the integrity of communication. Endorse freedom of expression, diversity of perspective, and tolerance of dissent to achieve the informed and responsible decision making fundamental to a civil society. And the third one here is to strive to understand and respect other communicators before evaluating and responding to their message. Ayan, yung sa una, it's just the same with the last one I've discussed kanina, yung sinasabi niya na both parties should invoke honesty para magkaroon ng prudence yung communication. Dito sa pangalawa, this just tells us that people could have differing views, differing viewpoints, differing opinions, and what we should do is to just tolerate and try to be understanding because we cannot control um, others thinking. So kung iba yung pag-iisip mo sa kanila, then you have nothing to do about it kasi hindi mo naman kontrolado yung kanilang pag-iisip. There should always be freedom of expression, ayan, diversity of perspective, magkakaiba tayo, we just have to respect it, and tolerance of dissent. And then, pangatlo, before you give your judgment, you still have to fully understand the message. Hindi pwede yung initial understanding o hilaw, initial interpretation mo, saka ka na magbibigay agad ng judgment mo. You have to make sure that you have finished the entire message and you have fully understood it before giving your judgment. Okay, what else? Promote access to communication resources and opportunities as necessary to fulfill human potential and contribute to the well-being of families, communities, and society. And promote communication climates of caring and mutual understanding that respect the unique needs and characteristics of individual communicators. Condemn communication that degrades individuals and humanity through distortion, intimidation, coercion, and violence, and through the expression of intolerance and hatred. Ayan. So, ito ay isang importante rin na principle sa ethical communication kung saan it's your responsibility to rebuke, ayan, tapos kontrahin yung mga alam mo na nagpapasiwalat ng mga maling impormasyon. And this is tantamount actually online, 'di ba? Ang daming peddlers ng fake news. And as a citizen involved in a certain communication, it's your responsibility na somewhat inform the public of what is true. Kasi rampant online ngayon yung mga ginagawa ng memes, yung ini-edit nilang video clips para maiba yung totoong sinabi ng isang tao, etc. So yung dapat kino-condemn mo, nire-rebuke mo yung mga taong nagpapakalat ng communication na ang purpose ay i-distort ang truth, ang katotohanan, i-intimidate ang isang tao, i-coerce o uh, maging violent ka over the people that you don't like. So, sisiraan mo na, gagawan mo na ng kung ano-ano dahil lang sa ayaw mo sa kanya. So, somewhat, principles of ethical communication ay para maging agent tayo of truth, ayan, of honesty, of things that would promote truthfulness kahit sa anong channel yan online, um, sa audiovisual, oral, ayan, written, dapat laging factual. Okay. Next, being committed to the courageous expression of personal convictions in pursuit of fairness and justice. Advocate sharing information, opinions, and feelings when facing significant choices while also respecting privacy and confidentiality. And third, accept responsibility for the short and long-term consequences for our own communication and expect uh, the same of others. Okay, when we are speaking what is true, then there is nothing to be afraid of. Like we should take the courage on, sabi nga, 'di ba? We should be very courageous, we should be brave. Ayan, we should hold the line, ayan, stand in what we believe in, especially if what we believe in is something that is right. Ayan, so dapat maging matapang lang, lalo na kung ang pinaglalaban mo ay patungkol sa pagkakapantay-pantay, fairness and justice. Okay. Okay, so while we promote sharing of information, opinions, and feelings, we also have to take note that some of our rights stops when the rights of others begin. Tama? Sinabi ko na yun sa inyo, kaya while we advocate for sharing of information, opinions, etc., kailangan din natin isaalang-alang at isipin na mayroon tayong tinatawag na privacy and confidentiality. So there are things that we cannot share because they're only limited to a specific or particular organization. For example, you are working sa isang institution at naglabas ng isang communication doon na para lamang sa internal, para ang communication na yun ay intended lamang para sa lahat ng members of that organization, and you don't have the right as part of ethical communication, you don't have the right to spread that certain document, for example, certain written communication or oral man yan, etc. Kapag ka-intended lang siya internally for the members of the organization, hindi mo yan dapat ikinakalat because we have what we call privacy and confidentiality. So, my example falls under confidentiality. How about sa privacy? Ano yung mga pwede nating maging examples? Yung kapitbahay mo, nalaman mo na nagpa-divorce siya, you're gonna spread it, magiging marites ka ba? Actually, pwede kanyang kasuhan. Her personal life is none of your business. Kaya yung divorce niya, ay hindi mo dapat yan ikinikwento o pinagsasabi sa kung sino man gusto mong pagsabihan because that is already covered by privacy. Alright? And I think that ends there. I'm going to open another PowerPoint presentation pero sa separate video lecture na yon at principles of communication naman na yun. Another sets of principles of communication. Alright.